All right, greetings everyone, and welcome to Elixir Fountain Live from ElixirConf. I'm your host, Johnny Winn, and we are your weekly source for news and interviews from around the Elixir community. Before we get started today, I want to say thank you to the team at I Can Make It Better for letting us run a little experiment with their new real-time marketing survey application. You'll notice the URL up on the screen, and you can head over there and log in to be an interactive part of the program. We have a few questions about your experiences with Elixir, and then a special treat. After the survey, you'll get to pick the 5 behind the code questions. That's right, you'll submit questions to learn a little bit more about the panel, and the top 5 will be selected to put the panel on the hot seat. Y'all ready for that? Yeah. Good. All right, so I'm gonna let everybody introduce themselves because figuring it better than going down the line.
Okay.
And you are?
I'm José Valim, the creator of Elixir, and I had a talk about Elixir.
Sweet.
My name is Gardner, work for a company called Cultivate in Edinburgh, over here for the conference, and I talked about Phoenix with Elm.
Hello, I'm Lennart Fridén. I am a developer from Stockholm, Sweden, on a Journeyman tour, and I had a talk called Virtually Instructional about the instruction set of the beam.
Hey everyone, my name is Eric. Sorry, I forget it sometimes. I didn't have a talk this year, but I'm the creator of Ecto and the Hex package manager.
Hey, I'm Chris McCord. I created Phoenix.
Hi, I'm Bryan Joseph. My talk was on Elixir in the browser. I'm from New Orleans, and I just like programming stuff.
All right, well, we're glad to have you guys join us today. I want to start with you, Alan, because you talked about Elm, which, we're at an Elixir conference, so, it seems a little odd. But, tell us a little bit about your experience with Elm. Like, what brought you to it?
So I basically came into it by watching Mike Clark's podcast for Pragmatic Studios. And I was playing around with Elm and doing Phoenix as well. And I just thought, well, these two seem like they'd be a good fit. How can we get Phoenix channels linking up to Elm's functional reactive programming? Basically just been kicking the tires on that, and it's been fantastic learning about it.
What's that now? You say it's been fantastic learning about it, but I poked at Elm a little bit, and I had some trouble getting started. Where's the documentation at now?
Documentation's not too bad. I think the slight problem is it's a case of, yeah, you can get there, but not from here. I kind of didn't have the whole Haskell background that a lot of people coming into it have got. It's just a case of loading that into your head and figuring it out. It has taken me a little bit of time. Other people might get there quicker.
Well, it seems like it's on, and I was kind of thinking it kind of reminds me of, or what little I know about it, reminds me of where Elixir was, say, like a year and a half ago, as far as like, it's people are probably using it in production in some places, people aren't. It's in like this variant, but it's not at 1.0 yet, so it's still kind of in flux a little bit.
Definitely so. Again, I'm quite new to the community, but yes, the community reminds me very much of the Elixir community. The whole language, the way that it kind of solves a problem in a really elegant way, and that's what attracts people to it, right? That's what attracts people to Elixir, it's what attracts people to Phoenix. It's the same thing that attracts people to Elm. I'm tired of bashing my head against JavaScript day in, day out. This problem is really not solved. Oh, hang on, here's something that maybe does do that. So it makes it worth your while to spend the time to learn it.
Well, now, you were talking in your talk. I know everybody here saw the talk, or at least half the people here saw the talk, because it was a 2-track conference. But you did mention, like, there was some issues you had with Phoenix. Was it the channels with? It's a little different.
I didn't so much have problems with Phoenix. Phoenix is really amazing to work with. The generators, particularly, basically gives you the code that you need to write, and you can then learn from that and then take it on from there. So that was fantastic. The thing that makes it slightly more difficult is that Elm has a particular way that it wants you to talk to it through channels, and Phoenix handily wraps up the socket stuff in Phoenix.js, but at the same time, that also means that you've got to try and figure out how you get that square peg into a round hole. There was a little bit back and forth on that.
Now, Chris, you've seen, like, you've got these new, like, the front end, iOS. Phoenix has actually got quite a few channel clients now, right?
Yeah, we hit iOS, Mac OS 10. We have a C# client, so all Windows platforms, Windows Phone, browser, obviously, and we have a Java client. So we should run everywhere, mostly.
Successfully.
Mostly-ish, yeah.
Okay.
Some of the clients need to be a little more mature than others, but they're all Phoenix 1.0 compatible. I think the C# and Objective-C clients and the Phoenix.js client are all used in production already and should be more solid than the others. But we'd love help there, and if you want to build an application that's multi-platform, it's a great choice.
And before we get too far away from front-end development, I want to ask Bryan, because Bryan, now you've taken a unique path with Elixir. You decided to write something completely different. Well, it's based on Elixir, but it's really, it's for writing JavaScript using Elixir. It's similar to CoffeeScript, would that be fair to say?
I would say the influence is probably more ClojureScript.
ClojureScript, that's what I meant to say,
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, so I like writing back-end code. I don't like writing front-end code, and I like Elixir, and I want to use Elixir to write everything. So that is as simple as it is. That's pretty much it.
Well, so that basically, what got you started? You decided that there's this, and I say this because I kind of went down the path like in the early days of me getting involved in Elixir, because I had a lot of people that were because I was at a company called HashRocket. Some of you may have heard of it, I don't know, but they were wanting to do some stuff like that, and so I was kind of playing around with the guys, and it seemed really, it was definitely not something that I wanted to get too deep into. So, I mean, what made you decide to tread those waters? Just because you don't want to do front end?
Well, so I picked up Chris McCord's book, Metaprogramming Elixir, and I was reading through that. At that point, I was programming in Elixir for a little bit over a year, but I didn't do I didn't use macros as much as I really wanted to. So I got the book. And the first thing I noticed is that the abstract syntax tree is it's not hidden from you. It's readily available for use. At the same time, I was looking at the SpiderMonkey abstract syntax tree, and I had like 5 days off from Mardi Gras, and I just started experimenting. And so it's not as complex. If you tie in Erlang with it, is extremely complex, but just like doing the process of translating the Elixir abstract syntax tree to the JavaScript abstract syntax tree is somewhat simple, but that wasn't the details. But yeah, it's.
Well, before we go too much further, one of the slides has come, or one of the survey questions has come in, and it seems to be a little unbalanced here. So we asked the audience, what server-side language did you primarily come from before Elixir? We seem to have. And the other thing is we have more people than here. Who's not taking the survey? Looks like we got 38 people coming from Ruby. Low numbers. Oh, lost connection. Okay, we're working on that. We'll get it up in just a minute. But so that kind of brings me around over here. So, Jose, it seems like there's I've talked to several people. It seems like there's like a diverse group coming from other languages. It's not just Ruby people are coming to Elixir from. There's what have you seen? Where have you seen people coming from?
That's a tricky question. Well, let's see.
Just look at the survey. We can at least guess those.
Yeah. So I've seen people coming from everywhere since the beginning, and this showed up in the language. So I like to really use the example with Mix. So Mix was a project that was not started by the Elixir team. It was started by a Clojure developer, and he was bringing his ideas with Clojure, and that was the foundation for Mix. So that's an example. We see a lot of people coming from Ruby, obviously, but also a lot of Python developers and Node.js developers, especially because of Phoenix, being attracted to the whole web development experience. What else? It's interesting that also with the embedding work, we are attracting people also. So at the conference, we had some talks talking about running embedded devices, and I'm really excited because it can attract yet another different crowd and bring a bunch of other new experiences. So it's a little bit from everywhere. But I would say the three main ones would be Ruby, Python, and Node, which are, dynamic languages. And we have a good amount of similarities. At the same time, we don't, but, it's, yeah.
Lennart, so speaking of that and like where people are coming from, you did a really cool thing this summer. And you guys get a sneak peek of this because I'm going to try to have him on the show so we'll get more in depth. But
I'll be back.
yeah, basically, yeah. But you did a really unique thing this summer. You went on like a Journeyman's tour. I mean, you went around to a few different, and what kind of experiences did you encounter? What were people looking at to learn from you?
Right. So, well, I'm still on the Journeyman tour. Basically, I'm visiting. For those who don't know what it is, I'm visiting in a new company or a new development team, really, in practically every new week. Spend a couple of days, 3 to 4 days with the team, working with whatever they are working on at the time, and sharing whatever I know and can bring to it, and learning from that, from what they're doing and how they're doing things. And a couple of things that I've noticed is that almost every place I've been to have been interested in trying out Elixir. And they've also been interested in trying out mob programming. And if you combine the two, you get one hell of a Trojan horse for actually getting people excited about learning a new language, learning it together, experimenting with it. Some have, picked up real interest in Elixir or might have already been using it before I came there. And I hope that my presence could have been a gentle push to keep doing it. Others had never tried it, but liked it. So what I've been seeing is that coming back to what Jose said about the diversity of the people coming into the Elixir community, I've seen much the same thing. It really doesn't matter what type of company I'm visiting for the time being. I found people being really, really excited by Elixir, and they were doing Java, building management software for optical network equipment, which is a rather far cry from your average web developer and Rails developer.
And that's there seems to be a lot of interesting problems. I know Jose and we talked when you were on the Fountain. It's awesome. Like Bryan's working on ElixirScript, and there's people working on embedded devices, and there's and even I know we have Steve Palin who's doing a lot of stuff with phone systems, which is fun because it's phone systems. Nobody. So but it's kind of like there's all these different applications. It's not just hey, let's see if we can build better web applications. There's so much more out there. Now, Eric, I kind of wanted to talk to you about, because you do a lot with the Hex Package Manager, and you're on the core team and things like that. So I'm going to ask you first, and Jose, you feel free to jump in on this too. There's a lot of changes that are kind of happening in the languages and stuff like that. And what's it like working with Jose on the core team?
So jump in whenever you want to.
It's great, really.
Did you see that bus drive by?
It's a good thing you got a couple of us, shielding you.
Exactly.
So it's very interesting. So I kind of started out work with Elixir firstly with Ecto. So I started working with Ecto, and
When did you start? Do you remember about the time?
So Ecto was
2012.
No, it wasn't 2013. Yeah. So over 2 years ago. So that's when I really started to work with it. I've been checking out for almost a year before that, playing with it. But I started working with Ecto, and Ecto started as a sort of a summer job for me. So I was sponsored for 3 months, I think, to work on Ecto. And that was a very interesting experience. So it was basically that Jose was mentoring me as I was working on it. And that's very nice because Jose is always very well researched. So I think you read 2 or 3 books about databases and the different design patterns around that, and that was very nice to be able to lean on that, and also his technical experience with the language, of course, since Ecto is a lot of meta programming, so that was very nice, and he's generally a pretty nice guy. Yeah.
Chris, do you feel the same? Don't worry, we'll get to you, Jose.
No, speaking of the books, I had created a competing database library that was very similar to Active Record, which was not a good idea when I first got into Elixir. And Jose reached out to me, and he liked probably the only good idea I had. And he basically was like, hey, I think we could do this better, which has been a trend, I think we can do this better. And he actually gave me a reading list. So he's like, here's a book you can read. And
go read this and come back to me.
Yeah. And I went and read this book, and it was like enlightening. And I was like, oh my gosh, the repository pattern totally makes sense.
And what book was it? Do you remember?
I actually don't remember. I can dig it out.
We'll dig it out.
It's a free PDF, but
I think it was the InfoQ book about domain-driven design. They have a detail, because the domain-driven design book, it's like huge, right? And they have like a explained one or digest version from InfoQ.
Cliff's Notes, right?
Cliff Notes, yeah.
Cliff Notes.
No, but I will say, it's a common theme, with Jose also has mentored me along the process. And it's like getting into functional programming, it's been a massive learning experience, but every step of the way, I was way behind what Jose was trying to, I don't know the best way to say it. I could tell that I just had to see the vision of how when he released Plug, and how the functional transformations and Plug being a pipeline of functions. Anyway, he basically helped me level up at each step of the way. And then when it came time to do Phoenix channel layer with OTP, kind of stumbled my way through it. I had a lot of global processes, things that could be made to work. And then Jose came in very nicely, mentored me I think we can make this a little bit better. And now it's something that's extremely compelling. Along the way, he's been very much helping me get to that next step.
Yeah, I have to say, I mean, I don't do anywhere near as much work as you guys, but when I have contributed, when I'm wrong, Jose is the most polite person about being wrong. And it's and it's really, I mean, it makes it enjoyable, and it's almost like you want to do better. When he talks to you, no, I can do this better. You try to improve. And, a lot of other languages you come to, and you try to commit to the core of it or something like that, or a major library, and you don't get that same reception. So kudos to you. I think we can all give Jose.
Since this is a podcast, you can't quite see it, but Jose is humbly falling through the floor right now and crawling away.
Well, we have to give him credit where credit's due. I mean, there's so it's really good stuff. Okay, we have another question coming in. Is everybody able to get this one? I hope.
It's coming.
It's coming. Yeah, slowly but surely, it's coming. So,
I had a question. So the previous one, people said other for the language they're using server side. Shout it. Which one was the other ones?
The two others.
JavaScript for the previous one using on the server side.
It's just semantics. No.
Yeah. JavaScript, and what was the other one?
C.
C. Cool.
Very cool. Okay. Okay. So I was going to ask about the. Oh wait, did we go back on our question? We were talking about.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so we'll just move on. So the next question I was going to ask is kind of, you guys talked a lot, Chris, both in your talk, Jose in your talk, about the next step, what's next. You got all the way out to 1.3. You didn't really talk versions, Chris, but you mentioned the whole GraphQL, which if anybody's been following on Twitter, sparked a lot of not necessarily controversy. And you mentioned it might be controversial, but so it kind of leads us as you're growing the language, you have to obviously kind of press the boundaries. But how do you determine where to press and which directions to take things? And Chris, you can start, and Jose or Eric, you can come in.
That's a great question. No, I think I knew it might be the GraphQL ideas might be controversial. It's a new way to build applications, and People don't necessarily like learning new things, but at the same time, I think like everyone in the Elixir community is excited about breaking new ground and actually being able to push the industry forward. So I think we've had, from Phoenix specifically, we've had REST has come along for a number of years, and I think people definitely have had pain points. So I think I don't think I know anyone that's extremely pleased with their JSON API. I think there are some standards that have been made to work, and then Facebook has come along with, at the same time, Netflix as well, with some new ideas to solve specific problems that they're having in real systems. And then they've been kind enough to open source and share these ideas, and it's been working out for them extremely well for like years now. So I think it's like some ideas early on look like breakaway successes, and we have two huge companies that are telling people like this is working out extremely well for us. So for me, it's look at that past and what's been done and what you can learn from it, and then see what new and interesting things people are doing and explore.
Well, it's a science. You have to question the answers, right? So, and speaking of JSON APIs, before I know switching gears here real quick, but Alan, I mean, as far as like the JSON API's interaction within Elm, I mean, what is that like? I mean, where would something like moving to a GraphQL model help with that, or like?
Well, I know certainly that Evan Zaplicki, who's the creator of Elm, is looking at GraphQL just now. He's wanting to include it as part of the effects style that Elm has. Something also that hopefully we're going to be looking at for Phoenix channels as well. I think definitely, JSON APIs are here. They're around at the moment. We're all using them to varying degrees of success. But yeah, something like GraphQL is great because it completely reframes the question. It'll be interesting to see how those things come together. I also really like the fact that this community embraces that and is always looking to see if there's a better solution to what we currently do.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that most of the people that come to the community, that's one thing they really like embrace and they like is like it is this new thing that they can kind of join into and like see that like you can't just do the status quo all the time. At some time, it might not be comfortable, but you have to push the boundaries. So
yeah. No.
Yeah, so the whole conversation reminded me of last year's keynote, right? So the important thing about GraphQL is not particularly GraphQL, but the idea. And as I said, it's science. It requires asking and experimenting. And the keynote last year was exactly, hey, I think this thing is a good idea, but how it's going to map to where we are as a community, as an ecosystem, as a language, as a runtime. And we are going to try stuff, and sometimes it's going to suck, but sometimes it's going to be good, right? And it's all part of the process.
Well, now, how do you deal with the baggage that other people bring? Like when you're going to look at something like this, especially like Elixir, some of the things that you were talking about, like kind of changing the direction of not necessarily changing the direction, but adding new features that may or may not be liked at first. So you have some people coming in, and you have these different language baggage basically pulling you in different directions. How does the core team kind of decide what's best? I mean, is it you've got the end word? Is it a democracy? Is it like how did the changes go into place? Like how do you decide what to do next?
That's a very good question.
Just so everybody knows, José looked at Eric and Chris and gave him the evil eye. What's that? No. What's the answer?
Yeah, it's.
Go ahead, guys. Answer. This is worse than 5 behind the code.
Yeah, so I don't think there is a particular way that we go about it. It requires a lot on, so for example, if someone sends a pull request to Phoenix or something, then Chris and I will go talk about it and we'll talk to Jason, Sonny, and Lance and see, hey, what do you think about this? Is this the way to go? If it's something big, right? Because if it's a small contribution, say, hey, we are adding this function and it sounds like a good idea, then we're like, yes, thank you. And we merge the pull request and we fight to see who pressed the merge button first.
Jose always wins, always.
I've decided that Jose sleeps 2 hours a day.
Yes. No, he just has faster internet. But I was going to say though, I've always said like we do, or like I do with Phoenix, like on-demand driven development and features, where a lot of we try to solve like 80% of common problems people have. So a lot of the time we wait until someone asks for a particular feature. And especially this is like some wisdom that Jose has given me is like, when it comes down to us implementing any new feature, like when we added the HTML layer and form helpers, it's like, there are some things that Jose and I were like, well, we could use this. And then we were like, oh, we should add it. And it was like, well, no, and this is something that Jose always tells me, like, you can always add it later, but things are always easy to add later, but they're much harder to remove. So usually we'll get, a simple solution out, and then as people ask or have needs, especially people using Phoenix or Elixir in production, we'll use that to kind of drive our decision process.
Well, now how do you prevent, because sometimes small changes can be worse than big changes, because you do one small change, and next thing you know, you're down a road that you're like, how do we get here with this bloated code base? How do you guys prevent that from happening? And do you just have to at some point step back and say, we got to look at these smaller changes? Or, I mean, what do you do to prevent that?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I don't think there is one particular answer besides, the changes are happening, and then we always look at the whole picture, say, hey, does this thing belongs to where it's being added, and seeing the context of things. I don't think, so to answer it properly, would need to ask in 1 year or 2 years to see because now we are in a growth period, right? But it's probably too soon to answer if is it a healthy one in terms of code base, right? Is the code base going to the proper place? It's too early to tell, I think, and to really answer if it's working or not. But there is one thing that we do, which is one of the reasons why I'm usually very, let's say, aggressive in terms of issues tracker, and we are doing that with Phoenix and the other projects, is that so every time someone's open up an issue, we go and say, hey, this is supposed to be starter, intermediate, and advanced, and we label the thing, and then if you don't think it's appropriate, we close. It can even be like a good idea, but it would take a lot to implement, and it's not very high priority with the other things. Then we go and close it because, in my experience, if we let the issues tracker grow and have a lot of things, it's more hurtful in terms of both for us working, because we are going to go for the team, right? Like, we're going to go to the issues tracker and say, oh, there are too many things in start. And also for contributors, right? They're going to go to that huge thing and they don't know where to start. And I think it's kind of related also with the small and big changes and how we handle them. So there is I don't have like a unified answer, but there are small things that we do, and there is a reason why we do them. And like being active in the issues track and closing things. I like to say is like ABC, always be closing. So,
well, you say that, and somebody had posted something. I can't remember if it was on the mailing list or somewhere. It might have even been on Twitter. They had actually asked, and this wasn't that long ago. This was like 6 months ago. It was like, is Elixir still active? Because the issues list isn't very big.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how those two mean it. It's like, Don't you see how many are closed recently? but you guys do a great job. Like, I've been to other repos that will go unnamed that have a huge issue list. You guys do a great job of maintaining that and keeping that really curated, which has got to be a full-time job in and of itself. So kudos to you guys for keeping it going. I do want to jump to our next question, which we have, what are your plans for Elixir? And it looks like, if I can read that, early production. So we have, I'm not going to go by actual numbers just because I know that some people are having connection, but that seems to be the biggest thing, is that most people are in early production. Since we're a podcast and we can't have everybody say it, just by a round of applause, like how many people are moving to production or on their way to production with Elixir? Sounds good. So yeah, there's quite a few people. So I mean, it's funny because I remember last year at the conference, of course, there was only 99 of us. For those of you that don't know, I don't think we mentioned it already, but it's 255 people at this conference compared to 100 last year. And I think we did a poll earlier to say how many people are using Elixir, and the majority of the room raised their hand. So it's grown so much in the last year.
And I think last year, Jim will probably remember better, when we asked like who is using production or close to use to production, it was like 10%. Like it was like 10 people raising their hands.
And most of them were on the core team. So, but no, that's great stuff. Speaking of Jim, real quick, I do want to say thanks to Jim. Jim is letting us do this podcast from here, and putting this whole event on. So, kudos to Jim. It's a great job again. Awesome conference, and a great job this year. Okay. All right. So, all right. Well, then you guys get to come from my questions because we're gonna do this 5 behind the code thing. This should be fun, right? Everybody's ready for 5 behind the code? All right. So I'm gonna start with the first questions. I came up with this. It's interesting. We'll start down here with Bryan. Bryan's been kind of quiet, so we're gonna make sure we get him involved early. So, what did you want to be when you grew up? When you grew up, I should say.
Meteorologist.
Meteorologist?
Yeah.
Awesome. Why? Just.
I watched the Weather Channel a lot when I was a kid. I don't know.
Awesome. Chris?
Astronaut.
Astronaut. Sweet. It's a common answer amongst developers.
I think I would say pilot.
Eric?
Yeah,
Pilot?
air pilot. Yeah.
Okay, sweet.
For some inexplicable reason, I think biochemist. I said unexplicable, okay?
Okay.
I wanted to be a writer. And then I discovered that with software, you could write words that did things, and then that blew my mind.
Nice.
The first thing I can remember me wanting to be was a history teacher.
Nice. Actually, I kind of wanted to be a history teacher too when I was young. I just realized it doesn't pay anything very much anymore, or at least in the States it doesn't. So, okay, so we'll move on to the next one. If you could have any superpower, what would it be? And we'll start on this end and work our way down. They always squirm for these questions. It's great. Yeah. You guys get to hear the short and condensed version when the actual podcast comes out. I get to hear them going, I don't know. Wow, that's a hard question.
Yeah.
So
what is the
superpower? If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Be invisible, so I'm not here.
Mastery over time.
Nice. That's a good one.
This one is easy. I want to have Jose's superpower. I want to be the fastest man on the internet.
I would probably say telekinesis.
Mastery of time was also mine, so we'll have to compete.
I was going to say telekinesis too, probably because I live in my mind a lot, and I'm always, I guess, answering. Well, I think of things in my mind, and then I start talking, and my wife's like, "What?" I'm like, "You couldn't hear that?"
Okay, so let's see if we can start a war here. Star Wars or Star Trek, and why? Yeah, you like that one, don't you? Come on.
Star Wars because I find Star Trek kind of boring.
Ooh, that first blow.
Clearly Star Trek and empirical evidence.
Star Wars, hands down.
Well, it used to be Star Wars. I think I have to go with Star Wars out of old habit.
Yeah, despite Jar Jar, I'm still Star Wars as well.
I actually haven't watched any really.
Wait. In your defense, you're pushing code all the time. You don't have time to watch movies.
That's what you get for spending all your time on the internet.
You know, there's the thing called YouTube.
Yes. So, okay, so we'll move on. So we'll see how this one works out. If someone were to make a movie about your life, who would play you? What? Exactly.
Why is it starting here?
Well, I can start. People tell me I look like the Allstate guy's son, so I'm gonna go with the Allstate guy. What's his name? Dennis. I don't know his last name. Hainsberg. Yeah.
Nice. Chris? No, Chris. Oh, no, you got one right there. You're not getting out of this.
I have no idea. So when you first asked that question for like some inexplicable reason, I thought Nick Cage, but that's only because.
Wait.
Oh, that's only because for the Phoenix workshop, we had our collaborative editor show like Nick Cage faces. But like that's immediately what popped in my head, and I immediately regretted it. But Nicolas Cage.
Well, now Nick Cage is playing you. That's it. It's sold. So.
You are evil.
Yes.
Obviously, some action guy like Stallone or Schwarzenegger.
Nice.
My apologies. You will simply have to image Google this one. I used to have a lookalike before he actually cut his hair. And he's kind of out of a job these days. No, it's not Johnny. He's kind of out of a job these days, so I guess it would actually be the former Swedish Minister of Finance, Anders Borg.
For me, Kate Blanchett all the way.
Nice. All right. So
wait.
I'll
be John Travolta just so I can do a face-off with Chris.
Nice. All right. So, well, now typically I'd ask something too, like what kind of music do you like? But we know, of course, everybody knows now who's José Valim's favorite band? Sigaros? Yeah. Am I saying that right? Sigaros?
I don't know if we're saying it right.
Okay.
Anyone who speaks Icelandic can tell. I think it's like Sigurus or something like that.
And we all know, everybody's familiar with Taylor Swift-driven development, right? So I'm kind of wondering, so I don't know if you know the new Ryan Adams album where he covered 1989. Does that count as Taylor Swift-driven development, or?
I have not heard it.
Oh, okay. Okay, so the last thing we'll ask is a nice, easy one. What are you reading right now? We'll start with Jose. What are you reading? We know it's not a Star Wars book.
I'm reading a book called How Not to Be Wrong, which, still hasn't, unfortunately, worked. It's by a guy called Jordan Edinburgh, and it's all about how there's the hidden maths in everyday life. It's really good. You should check it out. It's on Penguin Classics. Not affiliated.
I wish I could say I was reading the Erlang virtual machine specification, but I couldn't find one when putting together my talk. So nothing at the moment other than arcane instruction sets, I guess.
I'm actually not reading anything at the moment. Blog posts, I guess.
That counts.
I'm reading, it's the Leviathan Wake series. Second book is Caliban's War. It's a sci-fi series.
I'm not reading anything right now. I think the last book I read was Hatching Twitter, and that was a pretty good book.
Sweet. Awesome, guys. Are you ready? Do you got something now?
No, there's nothing particular. Papers and, yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, you guys made it. Give them a round of applause, guys. They made it.
Finally.
All right, so we're going to wrap up here. And I just want to say thank you again to the panel for being up here and Jim for letting us do this. It's been a great time. Everybody's had a great time at ElixirConf, right? Yeah. So I'm still going to have to go and add the news segment before this comes out this Friday. And so when I do that, you guys are going to go, I'll give me a good news stories, right? You going to do something in Elixir and give me some stories to write about? Yeah, come on. All right, well, thank you, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for being on the panel. We appreciate it. Thank you.